Hello, everybody. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the most anticipated games ever, and I think you knew that. Here to tell me a little bit about it, I'm joined by lead quest designer Pawel Sasko from CD Projekt Red. Pawel, welcome. Good to talk to you.
Oh yes, pleasure being here. I love talking to you guys and love talking about the
So,
game.
so I want to just right off the bat, I have a million questions about Cyberpunk, but you guys are always famously very tight-lipped. Is there anything just right out the gate you want to draw people's attention to, or anything you want to get off your chest about the game that you're excited to tell us?
Oh Jesus! I mean, we've been working so long for this game to just put it out of the door finally, and it's just this last stretch of polishing and just back fixing. I mean, the game is this non-linear RPG that allows you to fill the shoes of V on the streets of a night city, and we put so much work into making sure that the city feels the best. All the art styles, all the fashion of the characters, all the voiceovers, so that you as a player you can really see and really feel being there in a night city. All those like facades of the buildings, neons, RAX, everything helps out, to build up this amazing feeling. And for me, what's important is like to get the player into that world, to immerse the player, and just get him there and keep him, in shoes of V throughout all the time, so that you can really feel all your choices, all your consequences, and really be the character you really created, you customized.
Now, we've learned a lot about the game sort of since the last time we spoke. One thing that kind of jumped out to me is we know that when you're creating a custom character, you choose your character's background and basically where they're coming from and where that drops them into the story. I was curious, does your choice for what your V's background is, does that affect where physically in the game you start?
Oh yes, absolutely. Actually, like you start off having completely three different like opening quests, introductory quests, those origins that you have mentioned. And as a player, you actually meet different characters important for the main story. In that case, I mean Jackie, but also some other characters playing that different like life path quests, as we call them. And throughout the whole main storyline, actually, your life path will be reflected in your choices. You will actually have access to different choices, different options than other players. And that is also reflected in your choices and your options inside the scenes, but it will also open you branches in the quests, and some quests are completely closed off from another life paths. So basically this is a place for you to just replay the game more times, and as a player you can actually as a player you can actually like sort of continue this role play and being like, okay, I'm a nomad, and like get to meet nomads, got to go outside night city, like travel in convoy with cars and motorcycles with other nomads, become the part of their family and actually finish the game in that way, right? This is one of the bigger, I would say, side quest storylines we have in the game. And as a player, you really don't have to do that, but you can, right? And that opens you up as another endings, another possibilities. So as a player, you can really take your life path, your origin, and really like role play like this. But if your choice is to actually switch to something else and like start acting like a corp or like a street teeth, or everything in between, that's also an open possibility for you.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen that CD Projekt Red isn't afraid to hide certain portions of the game. Obviously, a choice you made halfway through The Witcher 2 would pretty much lock you off from one entire half of the game. And this seems like a similar thing here. I guess I'm curious, how much does character customization, how much does player choice affect sort of the outcome of the game? Like, I'm not asking you to spoil anything, but can you talk a bit about how varied the endings are, how open that experience can be?
Oh wow, okay, that's a cool question. Well, I mean, so we have taken lots of the things that we have learned from The Witcher 3, and we have taken this, as a teachings, and use that and updated that and expanded and just basically learned that, use that as a foundation to build a cyberpunk quest structure and the whole story structure. And as a player, you have this like main core storyline that you can follow, but then on the side of that you have the additional storylines. Those quests actually alter the main storyline in a really meaningful way. You can actually have completely different endings if you did the side quest or not. So it's really up to you as a player, and some options won't be even available if you didn't do it, because you simply don't know that characters, or you don't know about that possibility that just opens up. So it's really up to the player, to look for it. Now, when it comes to the number of endings, I mean, we have tried to go way higher than with Witcher 3, and like you can divide those differences into like major differences, and there's, let's say, few more than in The Witcher, but then in between, in like the boundaries of that different endings, you can actually have different variations, and that those variations are actually decorated on top of that additionally with like smaller choices that the player has been making, and that all together like just gives you this like actual ending, your own ending, the way you would actually play the game, the way you see yourself in Night City, the way you decide you would like to be, in a reference in relation to the characters that you have met.
That's kind of what I was expecting to hear. It seems like very much everything is scaled up here. Now you mentioned convoy stuff, and obviously being a nomad has a lot. Obviously, Cyberpunk has a lot of driving involved. I'm curious, how does vehicle ownership work? I'm used to sort of being able to whistle and Roach walks out from a bar or onto a roof. It's, are we able to steal any car we see on the street? Do we have a garage? I guess talk about sort of vehicles a little bit, please.
Oh wow! Okay, I love that topic. So, there's actually lots of different options that you can do. So, as a player, when you build your character in a specific way, you can actually start stealing cars, and you can just throw off people, from the cars. I'm just laughing because I love doing this in the game. That I just approach somebody like and throw him under the wheels of another car, and then it's just driving by. So you can do that if you want to, but so you can steal different vehicles, and really in the game you can steal everything that has wheels pretty much, and just drive around with it. But then in the same time, as a player, you own your own garage. The garage is actually something that is like with your flat in the mega building that V owns. That small space, and then throughout the quests and throughout the game, you can actually, in open world, you can obtain different cars, different motorcycles, but also doing quests, you're rewarded with completely different vehicles. And our vehicle team did like amazing job to just like flesh out those cars in a really interesting way. I just love the interiors of that cars, and they look completely different. There's lots of different models that you can own as a player, and you can buy them or you can just get them. And there's also like lots of different cars that you can steal and drive around. Now, Nomads, though, they are a yet another, like I would say, specific group or layer, in the social structure of Cyberpunk, because they augment their cars. They actually update their cars to be able to survive on the Badlands. So the cars that they have additional type of graffitis. They have special like augments and add-ons on the top of the car. So you may actually see, like, for instance, Quadra Type 66 that we have shown at some point, this yellow car. But then you can see that there is a version called the Reaver, the one that we have shown recently on Twitter, the one that is actually updated by the Raids gang that lives between Nomads on Badlands. And you can see that this car is completely different because those guys just took like the same frame and just reworked it completely. And this is the cars that you can also own as a player and steal and drive around with them.
Would you say that the amount of customization we've seen available to the player for just creating a character extends to other stuff like weaponry and cars and living spaces?
So as a player, you are able to customize everything that is pretty much around your character. So you can customize weapons that you're getting, and I'm talking here both visuals and functional part. You can update all the cyberware, pretty much everything that you can actually wear. We have pushed like really ourselves to the limit to just give the player a lot of different options. And we have looked both into like visual and functional way of doing this. When it comes to the vehicles, as a player, you can own different vehicles, but you do not really customize them. What you do, you actually own different vehicles that have been already customized. And you can find different vehicles that have been already tuned up, but you do not do it yourself. When it comes to the flat, V owns an apartment in a mega building. This is the one that you may have seen in the demo that we have shown in 2018. 2018. It's still available on YouTube. So it has been slightly updated because we've been working, of course, on the graphics of the game a lot. So it looks, I would say, slightly differently. But this is a space that V owns, and there's a small, I would say, customization planned regarding this. But V is not she's a mercenary, right? Or he is a mercenary living on the streets. Like, we do not really see V like decorating interiors and whatnot. However, of course, some small some small options to reflect your personality, your build are there in the game.
Right. It's not Animal Crossing. Okay. We got the ESRB ratings, which talked a bit about customizable genitalia. Obviously, The Witcher was a very mature, adult-oriented game. Can you speak a little bit about romance options? Geralt had a sort of canonical existing romances, but V is totally a blank slate. How are you approaching romance differently in Cyberpunk versus The Witcher?
So when it comes to romances, we actually look at it from a bit different perspective. So as you mentioned, Geralt was a defined character, right? So he had a specific traits. There were females that were interested in him and he was interested in them. That was pretty much it, right? When it comes to Cyberpunk, we approach it from the perspective of player building his own character and finding his own way in a night city. And that the night city is really inhabited by lots of different people that have their own preferences. And that was something very important for us. We just really wanted to make sure that those people that live in a night city, they're real. So what we did, we looked into the characters and built them in a way that they can have a friendly or a romance relationship with thee, depending of these choices, but they won't always fall for you. If you say if you're an asshole or if you don't fit for them, or if your build, your personality, your gender, your genitalia, if it doesn't work for them, they won't fall for you. This is how it works. It's sort of as a real life, and they just won't go for anything. And what we really have put a lot of emphasis on their personalities in the way they exist in a night city. So the way they are. And when you will be actually developing the relationships with them, you will go through the whole chains of quests. When you get to know them better, understand them better, you will see, what kind of dilemmas, I would say, they have in their lives. And then, depending how you act, they will, react to what you have decided. And that may lead to the friendship or really a romantic relationship. And that customized genitalia might come into place, meant to come into play eventually.
Wonderful. So one last question. This is on the console side of things, this is sort of spanning the gap between console generations, but at the same time, you're clearly targeting PC gamers as well. Can you speak a little bit about sort of what sort of next gen types of features PC players can expect, and conversely, are the demos that have been shown off sort of reflective of what people should be expecting from the next gen builds of the game?
Okay, so there's a bunch of things actually. So I think I could start probably from the graphics of the game, and this is probably the most visible thing that we can talk about. We have announced some time ago that we are working on RTX. Specifically, I'm specifically talking here about global illumination and ray tracing, and this is something that we're working on a lot, and the game really looks amazing with ray tracing enabled. And this will be, of course, available for the players at the release of the game. But there is also other things that the sort of a next gen or high-end PCs brought into play, and of course things like fast hard drives, things like things like resolution and textures and memory usage and so on. And of course, we are looking very closely and optimizing right now the FPS. Right, we really try to make sure that the game runs as smooth as possible. And at this stage of the production, we are at the moment when we are optimizing the most and putting lots of work into finding ways, how to make Night City run really smoothly, because the city itself is gigantic. It has lots of layers. There's lots of different NPCs. Like the texture budget is just insane. So there's lots of like tricks. And our like technical magicians are doing their best really to just pull it off in the best possible way. So I think those are the spaces that we're looking at, to just make sure that the Cyberpunk feels the best. But what I wanted to assure the players is the fact that when it comes to content, like for us, when player buys the game, it's always the same game, right? No matter of the platform, no matter of your build, no matter of like your technical build, no matter what machine you own, it's really the same game. And I think when you look at The Witcher 3, you can actually see it that when we have packed Witcher 3 on that small on the Switch, right? There's lots of work put into it, but there was no content actually that was removed from the game. It's actually a gigantic, rich game. And this is exactly the same philosophy that we're using when building Cyberpunk. We want to give the player exactly the same content. It's just that the tech that you own, the machine you own will just make it probably work better, maybe will look a bit better, but it's still the same game. It will be still really rich, like Cyberpunk experience.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I am dying to get my hands on Cyberpunk 2077 and dying to ask you lots of questions after I actually get to play the game. Pawel, thank you so much for coming by. Cyberpunk 2077 is out on November 19th on PC, Xbox One, Series X, PS4, PS5, Stadia at a later date?
That's
Nintendo
correct.
Switch someday? Who knows? I don't know. You'll probably port it to phones or something. Anyway, thank you so much, Pawel. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we're all dying to play Cyberpunk 2077. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm just dying to find out what you think about the game.
Don't come here often, do ya? It's good to see you, cabron. Now sit down and tell me what's got your shorts in a knot.